The family law lawyers who don't care, it's so clear. And if you have to care to do this right. And if you don't, go do something else. Because you do your clients a disservice, you do the opposing party a disservice, you do the children a huge disservice.
And welcome back to another episode of Cover Your Assets. Today we're joined by Ksenya Kogan and we're going to be tackling the topic of divorce and domestic violence from a legal perspective. Thank you very much for joining us.
I'm happy to be here. I don't know how legal the perspective is going to be. Mostly maybe illegal, but you know.
Okay, right,
okay,
cool. All right.
Well, good start. Good start.
We'll listen up. But before we get into that, we'll get into your rap sheet, your biography there, a little bit about you. So Ksenya is a practicing primarily in settlement and litigation, particularly skilled in sensitive and complicated family law matters, including child custody, domestic violence, and division of assets, including financial affairs, drafting premarital and postnuptial agreements, oral arguments in California Court of Appeals. You've also represented clients across various professional backgrounds, including athletes, musicians, real estate investors, developers, medical and legal professionals. So quite extensive experience there. Ksenya is also a certified minors counsellor, qualified to represent children in high conflict
Dissolution
proceedings. Ksenya is also serving as a daily settlement officer for the Los Angeles Superior Court, volunteering your time to assist in conflict resolution and volunteering mediation services for the courts.
You know, it sounds so weird to hear somebody say it, you know, like when they make you write it and then put it on a website, you're like, whatever, like you never really look at it, and then you read it and you're like, yeah. Okay.
Well, it sounds like you specialize in tough situations when it comes to divorce.
That would probably be the understatement of the century.
How do you do it? I'm curious. I mean, I know we'll go into domestic violence, but like, how do you manage to keep yourself centered and
that's a big assumption that I do that.
If you do.
So this is the hardest legal job to do. And a lot of my colleagues and peers and I, we often discuss, should you give a shit? Right? Because this is such a complex thing, and if you do it right, it has to eat at you because the family court system is so terrible.
In what way?
In all of the ways, whether it's judicial officers who are over caseloaded, shall we say? I don't know. I don't have a better way to put it. Or they're lazy or they're unqualified. And so they either don't read your pleadings, they don't know the law, or they don't give a shit. You're just a number on a calendar that day. And you could be in the right and your client could actually have a just position, but you are the 25th person that they heard the same bullshit from that day. And so you get the receiving end of all of the stress. And at the end of the day, a judge is just a person, right? Whose spouse could have left them the night before, who could have walked in on somebody cheating on them, who could have had to take their kid to rehab the night before. And so you are going to be on the receiving end of what could be a horrific personal situation for that person. And so it's so hard to tell a client this is the law, and yet I have no idea if this judge is going to apply the law, and I have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow.
Yeah.
And you have to give a shit because this is somebody's life. Even if, you know, for the rest of us, it's just money, right? It's just division of assets. Like, what's the big deal? It's going on a balance sheet, right? Whose column is it going into? This is that person's life. They've saved for this, and now it has to be divided. And so now a 401k or a plan for a mortgage no longer exists, right? Because...
Or a new one has to be created, yeah.
Yeah. You know, or you bought that house not, you know, with the understanding of this is our family unit. This is how we're going to make those payments. And now suddenly, not only your financial life is a wreck, but your personal life, like That house no longer has that same meaning and that same value. Do you want to keep paying that mortgage? Can you? That's a decision you have to make right now while you're also trying to get your emotional self in check and, ending a chapter in your life. And so the family law lawyers who don't care, it's so clear. And if you have to care to do this right. And if you don't, go do something else.
Yeah.
Because you do your clients a disservice, you do the opposing party a disservice, you do the children a huge disservice. And so I have gone through phases of wondering, should I care less? Should I care more? And if I care less, I'm not going to do a good job.
And then is
And then
it
I don't wanna
because
do it.
you care more that you go towards those more challenging cases that maybe other lawyers shy away from potentially? Or
So I'm not warm and fuzzy. I'm not all about rainbows and unicorns. And I am very tough on my clients because I tell them, if you can't survive this, you're not going to survive litigation. You can Google your way through the best case scenario, and you're coming to me for the worst case scenario, and I'm going to tell you what it is. And so I get complex cases because they're word of mouth, they're referred. So when I handle a client, because that's really half my job, right, is handling the client.
yeah.
And once I've done that, the client tells somebody else. And usually high conflict people engage with other high conflict people. And so that's where my cases come from.
Okay.
And I'm just known as somebody who handles high conflict people.
Okay. So speaking of high conflict, this sensitive subject of domestic violence, we covered this subject with a therapist in a previous episode, and we really wanted to hear from a family law lawyer about how domestic violence plays into the divorce process from a legal perspective. Like, what does it affect?
I don't think there is a family law attorney who practices who will tell you that the Domestic Violence Prevention Act has not been weaponized. So there is a caveat within the Domestic Violence Prevention Act. And really the concept of it was simple. It's that we wanted to recognize that women, and that's how it started, right?
Yeah.
That there are different types of abuse. You don't just have to have a black eye. Okay, there are various definitions. There's financial abuse, there's coercive control. And what people are not recognizing, and I'm hoping that does come to light, is that withholding children from parents who want to be involved and using the litigation process to smother the other parent so that you get more support and generally the woman and the man gets less custody, that is also domestic violence. But the Domestic Violence Prevention Act has this small caveat that says that if a parent is found to be perpetrator of domestic violence, which, by the way, could also mean disturbing somebody's peace. You sent a few too many text messages one day.
Yeah.
Okay?
During that divorce process.
Yes, and that emotionally impacted somebody. So now you're a perpetrator of domestic violence. You are on the same level as the guy who gave his wife $100 a month to shop at the grocery store, and she had 5 kids, and then he would leave periodically and turn off the utilities so that she knew her place. So now you, who sent too many text messages during an emotional process, are a perpetrator like that person. And so now there is a presumption under Family Code Section 3044 that says that you can't have legal custody.
Right.
You've got to do all these different things or you can't get legal custody.
So I think there's definitely people that abuse that definition of domestic violence. We know someone that unfortunately went through that as, I guess, the victim of being called a perpetrator for the purpose of child custody.
Weaponizing it.
But I think for the audience members that really are getting beat up or psychologically tortured and all that stuff, like what are their options? They're terrified. What do they do? From a legal perspective, I guess.
And so that is the hardest question because the clients, when they come to me and I'm defending them, I tell them, like, listen, they hand these out like candy. We can do our best, but know that it could be coming. And when you have the victim, I tell them, yes, they hand them out like candy, but yours is nuanced. And I get these nuanced restraining orders where my client will tell me, I'm terrified. Like, I don't want to bring this restraining order because it's going to antagonize the person.
Right. Yeah.
And I tell people, remember, it's just a piece of paper. It doesn't protect you.
Yeah, unfortunately, people have still, been killed,
Yeah.
with those in place.
And all it does is maybe gets the cops to you faster. And so you actually have to think, and there's also a concept of, yes, maybe somebody engaged in very specific behaviors at various points in your relationship. A finding of domestic violence, the purpose of it is for a restraining order. Do you need this person to be legally restrained from, coming within, 50 yards of you or whatever? Do you need that? Because when people start to think of it that way, they're like, no, I don't really need that. But they used to do these things. That is horrific. But do you need this litigation process? And you need to find a lawyer who understands that nuance. So for you to actually understand, do you need to go through this process?
Because are you saying that it could just actually put more flames or like put
100%.
more fuel on the fire?
100%. Or if this is somebody who at the beginning of your divorce or at the end of your marriage was a piece of shit, there's no question, engaged in really bad behaviors. During the course of your divorce, though, things die down and they're at a place, right? But occasionally you get like a nasty email, you get a nasty text. Do you really need a restraining order? Do you need a piece of paper and a 6-month litigation that precludes this person from coming at you? Because you know what's going to happen? If you have kids together, there's still an exception for brief and peaceful contact to exchange the kids. There's still an exemption for this person to be able to communicate with you because you will be sharing children with them.
Yeah.
So you'll be sharing those kids, so you have to communicate on an app. So what have you gained for yourself? And sometimes people come to me and they're like, well, I just want to feel empowered. And I tell them, at a price tag of, several $100,000, will you be empowered?
Yeah. How much does it cost
Yes.
here in LA?
So it depends. So this is the other crapshoot of family court, is that the judges don't control their calendars. They don't care. And so by operation of law, you're hearing once you file for a domestic violence restraining order, it must be heard within 25 days. But one party is entitled for good cause to one continuance. And the judges try to continue it within the 25 days, but sometimes they don't.
Continuance is delaying it?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so once you delay things, you open the door for a lot of fodder and a lot of other litigation, a lot of other strategic maneuvers and filings by other people. And so sometimes from the time you filed until you get in front of a judge, it's been months.
Okay.
And even then, if you want a 3-day hearing, sometimes your first day is in January and the next one's in May.
So it could drag.
It can drag. And by virtue of being on an attorney's roster, you're going to get bills because you feel, right? Like you feel like you can reach out to your lawyer because they're still your lawyer, right? And you get charged for that. The court appearances are expensive. Sometimes you'll sit in a courtroom all day and the judge will call your case at 3:50 only to say, I'm sorry, counsel, I don't have time for you. And it's like,
Oh my
first of
God.
all, court goes till 4:30. So you have 40 minutes. Let's start.
Yeah.
Okay. Or you're supposed to start at 8:30. Nobody starts at 8:30. That judge doesn't. Sometimes like I'll be sitting in the hallway and those judges are rolling in at like 9:15.
Oh, so it's like a doctor's appointment.
Yeah, it's
But
whatever
the
you want.
client's paying your
For you to
costs
sit
that whole
there.
time.
Correct. And, oftentimes I feel bad. Most times I feel bad. But at the end of the day, it's also when I'm sitting with a client, I'm sitting with a client. I am not on my work emails. I have my phone in case there's like some emergency and my staff is calling, but I'm focused on the client. I'm talking to the client. So I have taken my entire day to be here. So I can't not bill you.
Yeah.
So it is expensive.
It's extremely expensive.
So would you say, going back to that restraining order, because I feel like that's almost like a buzz term,
Right.
would you say you get one if you feel like your life is in danger? Or like, what do you think is that deciding factor when you say, do you need one? If someone just needs you to spell it out for them, is it my life is in imminent danger, even though actually I feel like it doesn't, if it is, it doesn't protect you really.
It doesn't.
Can you just like safely remove yourself from that situation to de-escalate?
Yeah, because look, at the end of the day, when somebody can put their hands on somebody else, there is an innate like disconnect with like humanity and basic decency and like, you know, the rules of society, right? Like we learned as children, keep your hands to yourself. You put your hands on your partner more than once, more than twice, or an argument gets so out of hand that you can leave marks on another person, you're not well.
And a piece of paper is not really going to help that.
Correct. And so you must go to the police. You must file a police report. You must have the documentation that you've done that.
Okay. That's good to know.
Yeah. And then you must call a lawyer. Call a lawyer. These are things that I never really understand in people. Find someone that you trust and get a referral.
Yeah.
And the referral should come from a professional. It shouldn't come from Google. It shouldn't come from, you know, oh my God.
A billboard on the side of the freeway.
Yeah, it shouldn't be a TikTok lawyer or a lawyer who advertises on Instagram. Run from those people.
Yeah.
Call a professional. Do you have an accountant, a money manager, a financial planner, a financial advisor? Do you know somebody in that field? Do you know a therapist?
Yeah.
Call a therapist and ask them for a referral. Ask a professional for a referral for another professional, and then talk to that lawyer. People are in abusive relationships. If you need to leave, you need to leave. I'm not saying people shouldn't get restraining orders.
Yeah.
I think that I represent enough people where I sit there and I'm like, this psychological warfare is so nuanced. This person needs a restraining order. But how do I deliver that message to the judge because it's so nuanced? Because you don't see the punch in the face. You know, and I've had the cases where my client sent 200 pages of text messages. You know, and everyone is looking at me like, you're never going to get this person, you know, to not get a restraining order against them. And it's like, no, but the context matters, right? It's not enough to say, there's never a context for putting your hands on somebody else.
Yep.
There's no context for that.
Yep.
Unless it's literally self-defense because they put their hands on you. There's no context for taking, you know, a piece of something and throwing it at somebody's head. There's never context for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's the new, and so in those situations, I don't think you need, you know, it's not rocket science that you probably need a restraining order, especially if the person's like texting you like, I'm going to kill you if you don't come home.
Right.
You know, but we're talking about the cases where there is a history and a pattern of abuse. Now, to me, financial abuse, huge. And I've had cases literally where, you know, mom of 5, and all she gets is $100.
In terms of domestic violence, whether or not you use a restraining order or not, how does that potentially affect other aspects of the divorce and settlement process? Does it affect assets? Does it affect custody, child support, alimony? Like, how does it affect or not affect those types of things?
Let's start with custody, the most important thing. If there is a finding that a parent is a perpetrator of domestic violence, now, generally the easier way to get that finding is to get the restraining order, but you could also have that finding if there is a trial and parties testify to domestic violence.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not necessary to have the restraining order. You
Yeah,
can
but what's
have
necessary
evidence.
is to have a judicial officer who is willing to understand that I didn't go the restraining order route because I'm not a moron, because I understand that I don't need this person restrained, but it doesn't mean that they have not perpetrated domestic violence against me.
Got it.
Like, yes, last year my husband put his hands on me and choked me out, not me. Okay, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like last year that happened. I don't need him restrained this year. We no longer live together.
Yeah.
But yes, that stuff did happen, and the court should make a finding that he is a perpetrator of domestic violence.
Got it.
And so if the court makes a finding that the parent is a perpetrator of domestic violence, there is a presumption against legal custody, which is really the holy grail of family law, which is the decision-making authority.
Yep.
And so it's a default. Once there's a finding of domestic violence, the other parent loses legal custody, and then all sorts of hell breaks loose. In terms of child support, it doesn't affect child support, but it affects spousal support, because the concept is that if I have been an abused spouse,
Yeah.
I should not have to pay my abuser money.
Okay.
The concept behind child support though is different. I'm not paying my abuser money. I am paying for the maintenance of my children. And so whether or not that person is a perpetrator of domestic violence is not so material, because the money is needed in order to share in children's expenses, pay
Okay.
for tuition, feed them.
So if the perpetrator is earning less money than the victim, and in normal circumstances, the victim would owe alimony to the perpetrator. In this
Potentially,
case, they wouldn't necessarily have to.
It is a factor.
A factor.
Yes.
Okay.
There's a family code section 4320 that talks about spousal support and all of the different factors the court has to consider when awarding spousal support.
Okay.
One of the factors is the perpetration of domestic violence.
Interesting.
Is the seeker of support a perpetrator of domestic violence? And the court can consider
Got it.
not granting the perpetrator a spousal support payment from the victim.
Any other things that we should think of in terms of how domestic violence can come into play when it comes to divorce proceedings?
It becomes litigation in and of itself. It takes on a life of its own. It is extremely expensive. Okay. And yes, there are statutes that say that the prevailing party, he who wins, can collect fees. Very rarely will you collect 100% of what you've paid. The other person also has to have the ability to sustain their own fees and yours. It is not sufficient that, they're going to pay my fees. Doesn't always happen. Yes, a lot of times it does. And I have plenty of clients that will tell you it's happened to them and they had to pay fees. But you could be the time it doesn't. And so was it worth it? And so you really have to weigh, what are you getting? Because a restraining order is to preclude the other person from contacting you, engaging with you, and all of that.
And is
that
that
what
your
you need?
role? Is that do you take on that role as your client's representation? Do you try to spell it out for them so that they can make that informed decision? Is it worth it for me or not?
Yes, because the way that I run my practice, and it's the way that I have always practiced law, is that I think if I don't guide you through the negative consequences, if I don't guide you through the reality and what it could cost you, and I always overestimate, I'm stealing from you.
Yeah.
And I don't practice like that. I'm not interested in being one of those lawyers. I bill a lot. I am an expensive attorney. I don't need somebody down the road questioning my fees, and I don't need a judge when I come up and I ask for fees. I don't want a judge to ever be able to say that, Ms. Kogan, I think that was excessive. It's not how I practice. And so I want people to understand, because people just want things, right? Because your neighbor had it. My friend told me, she did this and she got this and her husband had to pay, or his wife had to pay, or whatever, somebody had to pay. Great. They probably didn't tell you the entire story. They also probably didn't tell you that they paid 100% of the fee, or that they lost, or they paid for that, but then they had to pay their lawyer a couple of $100,000 on the back end for something else. And the court did not award those fees because they said, listen, I've already given you fees once. This person can't keep paying you.
Yeah.
So you have to think about all of those things, and you have to have learned and competent counsel. The worst thing you can do is get somebody who doesn't know what they're doing and who is going to tell you what you want to hear.
Right.
And that's a lot of times that's where I clash with my clients. I'm like, I'm not going to tell you what you want to hear because it's not going to help you.
Well, thank you. I think that's what a lawyer should do, not just tell you what you want to hear. You have to see all of it.
Hopefully.
Pros and cons.
Hopefully.
Well, thank you for that. That was very informative. I feel like I learned a couple things that I
definitely.
had no idea
I think I have
about.
to listen back a few times there. So,
I'll study. Yeah. Well, it's time for our divorce this or that segment, Ksenya. So we're going to put you in the hot seat. We're going to give you two terrible options.
you got to pick one though.
And as a lawyer, you'll reason your way out of it, and you'll tell us which option you want.
Okay. Which one do I want? Okay.
So we've got two options for divorce this or that. So,
We got a weird one.
Yeah.
I got some weird answers for you, I'm sure.
Yeah. So the first option is that there's this one company that you've had some interaction with in the past. and you've done your best effort. You just keep on trying to opt out of emails.
Unsubscribe.
You've called them up saying, remove me.
I hate your supplements.
You might have sent some
What
abusive
happens
emails
when you buy on
back,
Adam and Eve,
you know.
You've sent little legal emails like, I insist you stop or whatever.
And for whatever reason, there's just always a new email coming from a different email person's name, but it's always the same firm, and you just can't shake it. It's going to follow you around for the rest of your life. Just
And they're texting
constant
you.
text calls. It's just getting really irritating.
It's really annoying.
So that's one option that you got to either choose to divorce, and the other one is, for some reason, whenever you go to any park, outdoor space, there's just this one weird goose who's looking at you.
Okay, is this a person dressed like a goose or an actual
Like a
goose?
real
I'm
goose.
just trying to
Real goose,
understand.
real
Real
goose, yeah,
goose.
yeah.
And
okay.
it's attacked you a couple times.
Like with
actually.
feathers.
Oh.
It's attacked
Yeah.
you.
And it just like
And it just
focuses on
focuses
you.
I like it.
And it's a
Yeah.
stalker goose.
And
It's a stalker
You
goose.
travel overseas, it's there as well. So
It's everywhere.
why not? Hey, I'm making
everywhere I
it.
need
That's
to
it.
be.
It's wherever it is.
It's like a horror movie.
Visions, yeah,
Birds.
like. So that's
right.
your
Okay,
two
Hitchcock.
choices. So
Which one?
both in a way like stalkery or, harassing. Yeah.
So, number one, is the goose owned by somebody? Like, if the goose
Don't know.
attacks
A
me,
goose own? No.
I mean, I'm just saying, if it attacks me, can I sue that person? Like, I
Mother
just want to
Nature,
know.
I guess.
No,
Mother
I think
Nature,
it's a
yeah.
wild goose.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. So like if they scratch me and I have to go to a plastic surgeon, there's nobody I can send the bill to.
No.
All right. Okay.
Bloody attorneys. I tell you now, look at them go.
Question: can I shoot the goose?
I don't know. I
Oh,
don't see why
jeez.
not.
Because if I could shoot the goose, can I also bring people with me? Because if I could shoot the goose, I would take the goose versus the emails. But could I just get a new email address?
Yeah, there we go.
Which
Oh.
one though? Which one?
I'm going to take the emails because then I would just stop using that email and I would
Yeah.
take it off my MacBook and I would take it off my phone and they can keep
And
spamming
let's
me.
be honest, it's not like you're already being spammed by all these
Everybody.
other companies anyway. So yeah. What about you, Joe? Which one would you get rid of? Are you going to bring a gun to the park as well?
Well, I was thinking that I would like break the goose's neck, but I feel like human rights activists are going to get really angry with me. So
Someone would catch that on camera.
PETA's coming.
Yeah, PETA's coming.
You look busy.
But isn't it like self-defense? Like maybe I wait until it attacks me and then I'm defending myself against a goose.
Okay.
I don't think PETA would see it that way.
So which one are you picking though? Come on.
I'll pick the goose, and then maybe if I eat it, then it's not cruelty because I'm actually feeding myself.
I'd keep on accepting the emails because I'll just change my email address too. I think so. And I'll just stare back at the goose as well. Just like okay. When I think of a goose, though, I've always wanted a goose. So like having a roast goose or something like that sounds delicious.
Right.
Yeah.
But I don't want it attacking me. And what if it has like bird flu? Whatever.
That's gross. You're right. But I'll wear my mask before I do that, I guess, and wash my hands. I don't know.
All right. Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you for participating in that
Thank you for having me.
very weird divorce this or that. But thanks
Yeah.
for sharing your perspective on domestic violence. And it's not always about a restraining order. I did not know that. So
Yeah.
I thought that was...
And
particularly
even though it is a
interesting.
tool to use, I guess questioning should it then be used, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. And going through the pros and cons and whether it would really help or hinder the case overall.
Yeah. And if it, like, what are you really getting out of it?
Yeah, exactly.
And is it worth it?
Lastly, if anyone wants to get in touch with you, because maybe our high conflict folks are like
Listening
"Yes,
in.
I like her. Where can they find you?
They can go to my website, koganlawapc.com. If they Google me, my office comes up, 2049 Century Park East. If you're ever looking for an attorney, you Google the attorney's name, State Bar, California, and we're required to register. Our address, our emails, our phone numbers are
Okay.
up there.
Oh,
So
Perfect.
you can always just Google an attorney and include the word State Bar, California, and you'll get their information.
Great. All right, this is another episode of Cover Your Assets. I'm Joe,
And I'm Jane.
and we'll see you in a couple weeks.